Hours before he died, a 7-year-old boy recorded a video. No one knew it existed until after his body was found. And what he said made investigators stop the case entirely, because it sounded like he knew what was about to happen. At first, it didn't stand out. Just another short clip, buried among dozens of others on a child's device. A few seconds longer than usual, a little quieter than the rest. Easy to ignore, easy to miss. And for a while, that's exactly what happened. Because when something like this begins, no one is looking for a message. No one is expecting a warning. They're just trying to understand how a normal day turns into something unexplainable. But this video didn't feel normal. There was no laughter, no movement in the background, no one calling his name, just silence. And him, sitting still, looking straight into the camera, not distracted, not playing, focused, like he wasn't recording for fun, like he was recording for a reason. Investigators would later say that was the first thing that unsettled them. Not the words, the intention behind them. Because children don't usually pause like that. They don't think about what to say next. They don't weigh their words. They just talk. But this time, he didn't. He spoke slowly, carefully, like he was trying to get something right. And even before the video reached its final seconds, there was already a feeling that something wasn't right. At that point, though, no one had seen it. His family hadn't. The people closest to him had no idea that recording even existed. All they knew was that by the next day, everything had changed. The house was quiet, too quiet. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no clear evidence of a struggle, nothing that immediately pointed to what had happened or who was responsible. And that's what made it harder, because when there's no clear disruption, the answers don't come easily. They hide in small details, in overlooked moments, in things that don't seem important until they are. The people around him described the day as completely normal, routine, nothing unusual, no arguments, no warnings, no reason to believe anything was wrong. But that didn't match what investigators were seeing, because the timeline didn't hold together. There were gaps, moments that couldn't be explained, seconds that stretched into questions no one could answer clearly. And still, the video remained unseen, sitting there, silent, waiting until someone finally found it. It wasn't labeled anything important. No title, no sign that it mattered. Just another file, on a device no one thought to check right away. But when they did, when someone finally pressed play, everything changed. Because what they heard wasn't just a child talking. It was something else, something that didn't fit, something that didn't belong. In a normal, ordinary day, there was a shift in his voice. Subtle, but clear. Not panic, not fear in the way you'd expect. Something quieter, something controlled. And that's what made it worse. Because it meant he understood something. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to speak differently. Enough to pause. Enough to choose his words. Like they mattered. And buried inside those few seconds was a detail investigators couldn't ignore. Not loud, not dramatic, but specific. Too specific. The kind of detail that doesn't come from imagination. The kind that comes from experience, or from seeing something you weren't supposed to see, and suddenly, everything around the case shifted. The timeline, the people involved, the version of events everyone had agreed on. It all started to fall apart, because the video didn't just raise questions. It contradicted what people were saying. And when that happens, investigators don't just look harder. They start looking differently. Now, it wasn't just about what had happened. It was about what had been hidden, and why a 7-year-old boy, in what should have been a normal, safe environment, felt the need to press record, pause, because children don't usually document their day like that, unless something feels wrong, unless something has already started, or worse, unless they believe no one else is going to see it in time. And that's the part no one could shake. Not the video itself, not even the words, but the timing. Hours before he died, he left something behind, not for attention, not for fun, but as if he wanted someone to find it. The question is, what exactly was he trying to say? And more importantly, who was he trying to warn us about?
At first, it didn't make sense. There were no signs of a break-in. No shattered glass. No forced doors. No evidence that anyone had come in from the outside. No struggle. Nothing overturned. Nothing out of place. Just a quiet home. Frozen in a moment that didn't match what had happened. And the people closest to him, the ones who knew him best, insisted nothing was wrong. They described the day as normal. Routine. The kind of day that blends into every other day. He woke up. He moved through the house like he always did. Nothing unusual. Nothing alarming. Nothing that would make you stop and think, something's not right. But that video told a completely different story. Because while everything on the outside looked calm, that recording suggested something else was happening. Beneath the surface. Something subtle. Something easy to miss. Unless you were the one living inside it. The neighborhood itself didn't raise questions either. It was quiet. The kind of place where people notice unfamiliar cars. Where neighbors recognize each other's routines. Where anything out of place stands out immediately. But no one reported anything strange. No suspicious movement. No unknown visitors. No sounds that broke the pattern of a normal evening. And that's what made it harder to understand. Because when something happens in a place like that, you expect something to be off. A noise. A sighting. A disruption. But there was nothing. Which meant one thing investigators couldn't ignore. If no one came from the outside, then whatever happened started from the inside. Pause. And that changes everything. Because now the questions shift. It's no longer who got in. It becomes who was already there. And that's where the contradictions begin. The timeline, at first glance, seemed simple. He was last seen during the evening. Nothing unusual was reported. No signs of distress. But when investigators started breaking it down, minute by minute, small inconsistencies began to appear. Not obvious ones. Not the kind that immediately point to something serious. Just small gaps. Moments that didn't fully line up. A time that couldn't be clearly accounted for. A detail that was remembered differently, depending on who told it. Individually, they didn't mean much. But together, they created something investigators pay close attention to. A pattern that doesn't quite hold. And when a timeline doesn't hold, it usually means something has been left out. Or changed. Or hidden. Still, at this stage, there was no direct evidence pointing to anyone. No clear suspect. No obvious motive. Just a quiet home. A missing explanation. And a video no one could ignore. Because the more they looked at it, the less it felt like a coincidence. It didn't feel random. It didn't feel accidental. It felt intentional. Like it had been recorded. For a reason that hadn't been understood yet. And once that possibility enters the investigation, everything starts to shift. Now every detail matters more. Every word is examined differently. Every moment leading up to that night is no longer just background. It becomes part of the story. Investigators began asking new questions. Not just about what happened that day, but about the days before it. The weeks before it. Had anything changed? Had anything felt off? At first, the answers stayed the same. No. Everything was normal. But normal can be misleading. Because sometimes, what looks normal from the outside feels completely different to the person living inside it. And that's where the video becomes important again. Because it's the only moment in this entire case where there are no interpretations, no second-hand accounts, no filtered versions of events. Just him. speaking for himself. And the more investigators listened, the more they realized something unsettling. He wasn't confused. He wasn't guessing. He was describing something in a way that suggested awareness. Awareness of a situation no one else had acknowledged yet. And that raises a question. That doesn't go away easily. If everything was truly normal, then why did he feel the need to record that message? Pause. Because children don't document things like that without a reason. They don't stop, think, and speak carefully unless something has already changed. And whatever that change was, it didn't start that night. It started earlier. Long before anyone realized. They should have been paying attention. And the deeper investigators looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't a single moment. This was a build-up. A series of small, overlooked details that slowly led to something no one saw coming. And hidden somewhere in those details was the moment everything shifted. The moment when an ordinary day stopped being ordinary. The moment when a 7-year-old boy realized something wasn't right, even if no one else did. The next step was clear. To understand what happened that night, they had to go back. Back to the beginning. Back to the days leading up to it. Because somewhere in that timeline, before the silence, before the confusion, before the video, there was a warning sign. Something small. Something easy to ignore. But something that, once seen clearly, changes everything. Transition into backstory. And it starts with who he was. And the life everyone believed was completely normal. His name was Daniel. 7 years old. The kind of child most people would describe the same way. Quiet. Polite. Easy to overlook in a crowded room. But the people who spent time around him noticed something different. He paid attention. Not just to what people said, but to what they didn't. Small changes in tone. Moments of silence. The way someone's voice could shift without anyone else reacting to it. He noticed things other people moved past. Teachers described him as observant. Not the loudest in class. Not the one trying to be seen. But always watching. Always processing. And that matters. Because children like that, they don't just experience their environment. They absorb it. Daniel lived in a home that, from the outside, felt stable. Nothing about it stood out. A quiet street. Familiar neighbors. A routine that rarely changed. The kind of place where days follow a pattern. Morning. School. Evening. Sleep. Predictable. Safe. At least, that's how it appeared. Inside the home, the structure was simple. A small family unit. Close enough to function. But not so close that every detail was shared. There were routines. Dinner at a certain time. Lights off at a certain hour. Everything had its place. And for the most part, Daniel followed those patterns without question. Which is why the changes didn't stand out immediately. Because at first, they were small. Easy to dismiss. A slight hesitation before answering a question. A longer pause than usual. When someone called his name. Moments where he seemed distracted. Not by something around him, but by something he was thinking about. And when children become quieter, people often assume the opposite of what's happening. They assume everything is fine. But quiet doesn't always mean calm. Sometimes, it means something is being held in. And over the days leading up to that night, people started noticing that Daniel wasn't just quiet. He was different. Not dramatically. Not in a way that would cause alarm. Just enough to create a feeling that something had shifted. He asked more questions than usual. But not the kind you'd expect from a child his age. Not about games. Not about school. Questions that felt specific. Careful. As if he was trying to understand something, without fully saying it out loud. At one point, he hesitated before going into a room he normally walked into without thinking. Another time, he stopped mid-sentence and didn't finish what he was about to say. Small moments. Easy to overlook. But when you place them side by side, they start to form a pattern. And patterns matter. Because they tell you when something has changed. Even if no one can explain what that change is yet. The people around him didn't see it clearly at the time. To them, it was just a phase. A child being quieter than usual. Nothing serious. Nothing worth questioning. But looking back, those moments feel different. They feel like early signs. Not of something that had already happened, but of something that was building. Because behavior doesn't shift without a reason. Especially not in a child who had been consistent for so long. And that's where the discomfort begins. Because if Daniel had started acting differently, then something in his environment must have changed first. Something subtle. Something not obvious to everyone else. Something that didn't break the surface, but was strong enough to change the way he moved, the way he spoke, the way he thought. And the most unsettling part, he never explained it directly. Not to family. Not to anyone around him. At least, not in a way that was understood at the time. Because the only place where that change becomes clear is in the video he recorded. That's where the hesitation disappears. That's where the pauses make sense. That's where the version of him no one fully saw finally comes into focus. And once investigators connected those changes to what was said in that recording, the idea of a normal home became much harder to accept. Because something had shifted inside that environment. Quietly. Gradually. Without drawing attention. Until one moment forced everything into the open. And by then, it was already too late. Soft transition forward. To understand what really happened, you have to look at the final hours again. But this time, with those changes in mind. Because the night before everything ended, there were signs. Not obvious ones. Not loud ones. But signs that, once you see them clearly, are impossible to ignore. And it starts with what happened just hours before that video was recorded. The night before didn't begin any differently than the ones before it. The house followed its usual rhythm. Dinner came and went. Voices moved through familiar conversations. Nothing loud. Nothing that would stand out later as a clear turning point. From the outside, it was just another evening. But inside that routine, there were small shifts. The kind that don't stop a moment, but linger just long enough to feel slightly off. Daniel was quieter than usual. Not in a way that drew attention. Just, less present. He responded when spoken to. He followed instructions. But something about his focus had changed. It wasn't on the people around him. It was somewhere else. At one point, someone asked him a simple question. Something ordinary. And he paused. Not for a second. Longer. Like he had to think about the answer. More than usual. When he finally responded, it was correct. Normal. But the pause stayed with them. Only later would that moment feel different. Because hesitation, especially in a child who usually responds quickly, doesn't happen without a reason. As the evening went on, another detail began to stand out. Daniel didn't want to go to sleep. At first, it didn't seem unusual. Children resist bedtime all the time. They ask for more time. They find excuses. They try to stretch the night just a little longer. But this felt different. He wasn't playful about it. He wasn't negotiating. He was avoiding it. Quietly. When told it was time for bed, he didn't argue. He just didn't move right away. He stayed where he was. Still. Like going to sleep meant something. He wasn't ready for. Eventually, he did go. But even then, there was something off. He didn't settle the way he normally did. There was movement. Restlessness. Not loud enough to draw attention. But enough that, if you were listening closely, you would notice the difference. And then, there was another moment. Small. Easy to miss. He avoided someone. Not obviously. Not in a way that would create tension. But subtly. A shift in direction. A decision to stay in one room, instead of walking into another. A glance that didn't last long enough to be questioned, but long enough to mean something. At the time, it didn't raise concern. Because avoidance can look like preference. Like mood. Like nothing at all. But when you place it alongside everything else, the quiet, the hesitation, the resistance to sleep, it becomes harder to dismiss. Because now it's not one behavior. It's a pattern. And patterns don't form without cause. As the night moved forward, the house grew quieter. Lights turned off. Doors closed. Everything settled into what should have been a normal ending to the day. But one moment, one small moment, stood out more than the rest. At some point, Daniel asked a question. Not loudly. Not urgently. Just a simple question. Spoken in a calm voice. The kind of question you wouldn't think twice about hearing. At least, not at the time. It didn't sound like fear. It didn't sound like panic. If anything, it sounded like curiosity. But the wording was different. Specific. Too specific for a casual thought. And the person he asked answered it. Briefly. Then moved on. Because there was no reason to stop. No reason to look deeper. No reason to believe that question meant anything more than what it sounded like. But now, that moment sits differently. Because when investigators replayed everything, when they lined up every detail from that night, that question didn't fit anymore. It didn't belong in a normal, uneventful evening. It didn't match the idea that everything was fine. It felt like it came from somewhere else. From a thought process no one had noticed at the time. And once that realization set in, that single moment became something else entirely. Not just a question, but a signal. A glimpse into what he might have been thinking. Or what he might have already understood. Now, it's the one detail investigators can't ignore. Because if that question had a reason behind it, then something had already started. Before anyone realized it. Something quiet. Something controlled. Something that didn't break the surface. Until it was too late to stop it. And when you go back to the video, when you listen to his voice again, you begin to hear it differently. Not as a random recording, but as a continuation of everything that happened that night. The hesitation. The silence. The avoidance. The question. All leading to one moment, where he finally said something that couldn't be taken back. The next step for investigators was no longer just to understand the timeline. It was to test it. To take every statement, every version of events, and compare it to what they now knew. Because if the night before wasn't as normal as it seemed, then someone, somewhere in that house, knew more than they were saying. And the truth was already starting to surface. Transition forward. It begins with what happened the moment everything was discovered. Because when the silence finally broke, it didn't bring answers. It brought something else entirely. Morning didn't begin with panic. It began with something quieter. A delay. At first, it was just a small concern. Daniel hadn't come out of his room. No footsteps in the hallway. No movement. No sound. And in a house where routines rarely changed, that absence stood out. Someone called his name. Once. No response. They called again. A little louder this time. Still nothing. At that point, it wasn't fear yet. Just confusion. Because silence, in the morning, can mean a lot of things. Maybe he was still asleep. Maybe he didn't hear. But as the seconds stretched, that explanation started to feel less certain. The door to his room was closed. That, by itself, wasn't unusual. But when it opened, everything changed. There's always a moment. A moment where the mind tries to make sense of what it's seeing. Where it searches for a normal explanation. Something simple. Something fixable. But sometimes, that moment doesn't last long. Because reality replaces it too quickly. The reaction was immediate. Not loud at first. Not chaotic. Just a sharp shift. A realization that something was wrong. And then, everything moved fast. A call was made. Emergency services were contacted. Words were spoken quickly. But not always clearly. There's a certain tone in those calls. A mix of urgency and disbelief. As if the person speaking hasn't fully processed what they're trying to describe. Within minutes, responders were on their way. And when they arrived, the situation should have been straightforward. A home. A child. A clear event. But it wasn't. Because when police entered the house, something felt off immediately. Not in an obvious way. There was no visible chaos. No signs of forced entry. No indication that someone had broken in or forced their way through the space. Everything looked intact. Too intact. Rooms were in order. Objects were where they should be. Nothing suggested a sudden disturbance. And yet, something didn't match. Because in situations like this, you expect disruption. You expect signs that something happened. But here, there was almost none. It didn't look like an accident. But it didn't look like a break-in either. And that creates a problem. Because when a scene doesn't align with any clear explanation, it forces investigators to question everything. Even the things that seem certain. Responders moved carefully. They followed protocol. They assessed the situation, step by step. But even within those first few minutes, there was already a shared understanding forming between them. This wasn't going to be simple. There were details that didn't sit right. Small things. The position of certain objects. The way the room felt, undisturbed. As if whatever had happened without resistance. And that's not something you ignore. Because when there's no resistance, it raises a different kind of question. Not what happened, but how. And more importantly, why didn't anyone stop it? As the initial response continued, the focus began to shift. From emergency to investigation. From trying to help to trying to understand. And that transition happens quickly. When something doesn't add up. The people in the house were questioned. Simple questions at first. Routine. What happened? When was the last time he was seen? Who was with him? The answers came. Calm. Consistent. But something about them felt rehearsed. Not obviously. Not enough to accuse. Just enough to create doubt. Because when a situation is unclear, investigators don't just listen to what's being said. They listen to how it's being said. The pauses. The tone. The timing of each response. And here, those details mattered. Because they didn't fully match the weight of what had happened. Meanwhile, the scene itself continued to raise questions. There was no clear point of entry. No signs that someone had come and gone. Which meant, if this wasn't an accident, then whoever was responsible didn't need to enter the home at all. They were already inside. And that realization changes the direction of everything. Because now the investigation doesn't expand outward. It turns inward. Toward the people who were already there. Toward the ones who said nothing was wrong. And toward a version of events that no longer holds together the way it did at first. But at this stage, there still wasn't enough to prove anything. Just a feeling. A series of inconsistencies. A scene that didn't match what it should have looked like. And one more thing. Something investigators hadn't fully understood yet. The video. Still sitting. Unexamined. Holding a piece of the story. No one had connected to the scene. But that was about to change. Because as the investigation moved forward, as evidence was collected, and timelines were rebuilt, that recording would become the one element that couldn't be explained away. And once it was brought into the case, everything else would have to be re-examined. Every statement, every movement, every moment from the night before. Because the scene itself wasn't giving enough answers. But the truth was already there, waiting to be heard. And it begins with the moment investigators decide to look deeper into what everyone else almost missed. The first stage of any investigation is about clarity. Establish what happened. Confirm the timeline. Understand the people involved. But in this case, clarity didn't come easily. Because the more investigators listened, the more something felt off. It started with the statements. The people inside the house were asked to explain the night before. Step by step. What time did everyone go to sleep? Who was awake last? Was anything unusual? The answers came quickly. Too quickly. Clear. Direct. Consistent. Almost rehearsed. Everyone told the same story. Almost too perfectly. There were no contradictions at first. No confusion. No hesitation. And while that might seem like a good sign, to investigators, it can mean something else. Because real memories, especially from stressful situations, aren't perfect. They overlap. They conflict. They shift slightly depending on who tells them. But here, everything aligned. Every version matched. And that's what made it stand out. Because when multiple people recall an event in exactly the same way, it raises a question. Are they remembering? Or are they repeating? Still, at this stage, there was nothing concrete. No evidence to challenge those statements. No proof that anything had been altered. Just a feeling. So investigators expanded outward. They spoke to neighbors. People who lived nearby. People who might have seen or heard something, without realizing its importance. The questions were simple. Did you notice anything unusual? Any unfamiliar vehicles? Any sounds during the night? Most answers were the same. No. Nothing stood out. The street had been quiet. No disturbances. No raised voices. No sudden movement. Everything had followed its usual pattern, which only reinforced what made the case difficult. Because if nothing was seen, and nothing was heard, then whatever happened quietly, and quickly. Or, it happened in a way that didn't trigger alarm at all. And that possibility is where suspicion begins to grow. Because it suggests familiarity. It suggests that whatever occurred didn't feel like a threat. In the moment it began, investigators returned to the timeline. They mapped it out again. Evening. Dinner. Night. Sleep. Everything seemed accounted for. Until they started looking closer. Breaking it down. Not by hours, but by minutes. That's when the first gap appeared. Small. Almost unnoticeable. A period of time where the sequence of events wasn't completely clear. Not missing entirely. Just incomplete. One person remembered it one way. Another described it slightly differently. Individually, those differences didn't seem important. But when placed side by side, they didn't fully connect. And when a timeline doesn't connect, investigators don't ignore it. They isolate it. They go back. They ask the same questions again, but in a different order. And this time, the answers weren't as smooth. There were pauses. Small ones. Moments where someone had to think. A little longer than before. Moments where details became less certain. And that's when the tone of the investigation shifts. Because now, it's no longer just about gathering information. It's about testing it. Then came something else. A new line of inquiry. Security footage. Not from inside the house, but from the surrounding area. Nearby homes. Street cameras. Any device that might have captured movement during that critical window of time. At first, it seemed like a long shot. Because the neighborhood wasn't known for heavy surveillance. But even a small piece of footage can change everything. So investigators reviewed what they could find. Hours of footage. Cars passing. Lights turning on and off. Shadows moving across familiar spaces. And for a while, nothing stood out. Everything looked normal. Until they reached a specific point in time. A moment that should have aligned perfectly with the statements they had been given. But it didn't. Because during that window, something was missing. Not a person. Not an object. Time. A window of time. No one could explain. According to the statements, everything during that period was accounted for. Everyone knew where they were, what they were doing, But the footage didn't support that version completely. It didn't directly contradict it either. It simply left a gap. And gaps matter, because they create space for something else to exist. Something unaccounted for. Something that doesn't fit within the version of events that's been presented. Investigators focused on that gap. They isolated it. They narrowed it down, minute by minute. What should have happened, and what actually did. And the more they examined it, the clearer one thing became. That window of time was the key to everything. Because whatever happened, happened there. Not before. Not after. There. And yet, no one could explain it clearly. Which leads to a question investigators always ask. When a timeline breaks down, is the gap there because no one knows? Or because someone isn't saying? Pause. At this point, the investigation had changed direction completely. It was no longer about confirming a normal sequence of events. It was about uncovering what had been left out. And with each inconsistency, each pause, each missing detail, the same possibility became harder to ignore. That the truth wasn't outside the house. It was already inside. Hidden somewhere. Between what was said and what actually happened. And the one piece of evidence that could bridge that gap was still waiting. The video. Because while the timeline continued to break apart, that recording remained unchanged. Clear. Unfiltered. A version of events that didn't rely on memory. And once investigators placed it next to everything they had gathered, the gap in the timeline would no longer be the only thing that didn't make sense. Transition forward. Because the moment they press play, the entire case takes a different direction. At first, it didn't make sense. There were no signs of a break-in. No shattered glass. No forced doors. No struggle. Nothing out of place. Just a quiet home. Frozen in a moment that didn't match what had happened. And the people inside, the ones who knew him best, said everything was normal. Routine. Ordinary. The kind of day that fades into every other day. But something didn't sit right. Because while everything looked calm, there was one thing investigators couldn't ignore. A video. And that video told a different story. His name was Daniel. 7 years old. Quiet. Polite. The kind of child people don't always notice. But those who did noticed something else. He paid attention. Not just to what people said, but what they didn't. Small changes. Tone shifts. Silences. He observed everything. And children like that don't just live in their environment. They absorb it. From the outside, his life looked stable. A quiet neighborhood. Familiar routines. A home where nothing seemed out of place. Morning. School. Evening. Sleep. Predictable. Safe. At least, that's how it appeared. But in the days leading up to that night, something changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. A hesitation before answering. A pause that lasted a little too long. Moments where he seemed distracted. Not by what was around him, but by something in his mind. He asked questions. Not childish ones. Not playful ones. Careful questions. Specific. Like he was trying to understand something, without saying it out loud. At one point, he hesitated before entering a room. Another time, he stopped mid-sentence and didn't finish what he was about to say. Small moments, easy to ignore, but together, they formed a pattern. And patterns matter, because they tell you when something has changed, even if no one understands it yet. Then came the night before. It didn't start any differently. Dinner, conversations, routine. But inside that normal evening, there were shifts. Daniel was quieter. Not enough to alarm anyone. Just distant. At one point, he was asked a simple question. He paused. Longer than usual. Then answered. Correctly. Normally. But that pause stayed. Later. He didn't want to go to sleep. Not playfully. Not like a child bargaining for time. He avoided it. Quietly. When told to go, he didn't argue. He just didn't move. Like sleep meant something he wasn't ready for. And then, a moment no one paid attention to, he asked a question. Simple. Calm. But the wording was wrong. Too specific. Too intentional. It didn't fit a normal evening. But no one noticed. Not then. The house went quiet. Lights off. Doors closed. Everything settled. But something had already shifted. Morning came. But not with panic. With silence. No footsteps. No movement. No sound. Someone called his name. No response. They called again. Still nothing. The door opened. And everything changed. Emergency services were called. Responders arrived. And immediately, something felt off. No signs of forced entry. No disturbance. No chaos. Everything was intact. Too intact. Because when something like this happens, you expect disruption. But there was none. Which meant one thing. If no one came from outside, then whatever happened started from inside. Investigators began asking questions. What happened? When was he last seen? Who was there? The answers came quickly. Too quickly. Clear. Consistent. Perfect. And that's what made them suspicious. Because real memories aren't perfect. Then came the timeline. At first, it looked simple. But when broken down, minute by minute, there was a gap. Small, but real. A period no one could fully explain. Then came something else. Security footage. Not inside the house, but around it. And during that same window of time, there was nothing. No movement. No activity. A gap. And gaps matter. Because gaps create space. For truth to hide. Then, they found it. Not hidden. Not buried. Just, overlooked. A device. A tablet. Or maybe a phone. Something ordinary. Something already collected. And set aside. Inside it. A video. At first. It looked normal. A child. A camera. A quiet room. Daniel sat there. Still. Looking directly at the camera. Not distracted. Not playful. Just, focused. Then he started speaking. His voice was calm. Controlled. Too controlled. Because children don't speak like that. Without a reason. At first, nothing stood out. Just simple words. Ordinary sentences. Then, something changed. His tone shifted. Slower. More deliberate. Like he was choosing his words carefully. He looked away. Then back. And continued. He mentioned something. Not clearly. Not directly. But enough. Something he had noticed. Something that didn't feel right. Then came the moment. That changed everything. He paused. Looked at the camera. And said, "If something happens to me." Investigators stopped the video. Because that line changed everything. Children don't say that. Without a reason. Suddenly. The quiet behavior meant something. The hesitation meant something. The fear wasn't imagined. He knew something. The investigation changed. Everything was re-examined. Statements. Timelines. Evidence. And then, the truth began to break through. Forensics came back. The time of death didn't match the story. Not slightly. Completely. Someone had lied. Then came phone data. Location tracking. A device that was supposed to be still moved during the exact missing window. Now the gap wasn't empty anymore. It had activity. Presence. Someone was there. And their story didn't hold. Investigators went back. Asked again. This time, the answers changed. Slightly. But enough. And when a story changes, it breaks. The focus narrowed. Not outward. Inward. Someone inside the house was the last to see him alive. Not an outsider. Not a stranger. Someone trusted. The evidence didn't point to chaos. It pointed to a moment. A moment that escalated. Something that started small. And became irreversible. And instead of being reported, it was hidden. The timeline broke. The data didn't match. The story shifted. And the video made it impossible to deny. Because Daniel wasn't confused. He was aware. Aware enough to record. Aware enough to warn. An arrest was made. Not from suspicion. But from evidence. Everything pointing in one direction. The truth was no longer hidden. But it came too late. Because the most disturbing part was never just what happened. It was this. He knew something was wrong. He tried to say it. He pressed record. And no one listened. Not when it mattered. Only after. And even now. One question remains. If that video had been found sooner, would anything have changed? And the most unsettling part. We may never know.